Our last lesson, we talked about land bridges and how one possible way people got to the Americas. Today, we're going to start talking about those early civilizations in North America, how they lived and what they did. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to read from the book. We read pages 55 through 59 in class. And then after that, you're going to use that information plus what we talked about last lesson to fill out your worksheet here. If you want to follow along, you can click on this and it will pull up a picture of the text. If this is not close enough for you to see, you can always move your mouse a little, click zoom. I always go to 100%, but go to whatever works for you. So we're first going to come down here to this heading, early ways of life. We're going to learn about how they lived at the beginning. Early people most likely led a nomadic way of life. They moved from place to place, living in caves or in tents made of animal skins. They kept moving, following animals they hunted. So this word nomadic means they move around from place to place. Scientists know this because they have found spear points and other artifacts near the bones of ancient animals. Artifacts are objects made by people. And again, we can see this as one of our vocabulary words because it's highlighted yellow and bold. And then we know that the definition of that word comes after it. So artifacts are objects made by people. Now we're going to come here to a changing way of life. This is our subheading, so we know it's still talking about their early life. Giant animals such as mastodons and woolly mammoths once roamed North America. Early people hunted these animals. They ate the meat and used the fur, skins, and bones to make clothing and tools. They also gathered wild foods such as nuts, plants, and roots. For this reason, scientists refer to these people as hunters and gatherers. So they were moving around, remember, nomadic. So they're moving around from place to place, following these animals so they can hunt them, seeing what food is available. So you can see a picture here of them hunting the woolly mammoths. But something's going to change. So up here, we're now reading, slowly, the climate changed, becoming warmer and drier. About 8,000 BC, the giant animals became extinct or died out. So since their food died out, they had to do one of two things. They either had to find something else to eat, or they had to move, or they would die because they didn't have food to eat. So people began to find new sources of food. They began to fish and to hunt smaller animals. Over time, they made new hunting tools, such as the bow and arrow. About 3000 BC, some people in the Americas began planting seeds and growing crops such as corn and beans. Agriculture, or farming, gave people a reason to settle in one place. As groups raised more food, the population grew. So they started looking for things like fish that were able to be just in one place. They were hunting smaller animals that stayed in one place. So because of this, plus them figuring out that they could plant seeds to get crops, they were able to stay in one place instead of moving around to find food. Some early people formed what are now called tribes, groups who shared the same language, land, and leaders. Each tribe developed its own culture, which made it different from other tribes. So here we've got the question, how did farming change life for people? What do you think how it changed their life? Farming allowed them to settle down in one place. They no longer had to move around from place to place. So now we're going to start talking about some of those early tribes or some of those early groups of people. If we look at this map here, we're going to look at our legend. We're going to look to see this purple means Olmec. So this is the Olmec tribe that lived here. And then we're looking at the mound builders. They lived here. And then here was the ancient Puebloans, and here was the Maya. So as we're reading about these four groups, we'll be able to look and kind of get an idea of where they lived. Over time, groups began to form over civilization. Over time, groups began to form civilizations. A civilization is a group of people with ways of life, religion, and learning. With a more settled way of life, some civilizations built large cities that became centers of learning, religion, and government. Now we're going to talk about the Olmec. The Olmec civilization was one of the earliest in the Americas. From about 1500 BC to AD 300, the Olmec ruled most of what is now southern Mexico. The oldest Olmec city that scientists have discovered was San Lorenzo. Like many Olmec cities, it is located near a river. The Olmecs used rivers to travel between cities and build a trade system. Olmec artifacts have been found across Mexico. A strong trade system was just one achievement of the Olmec. They also created systems of writing and counting. These systems helped the Olmec develop a 365-day calendar. So the calendar we have is a 365-day calendar. So it's kind of cool to think that that came from, a tribe that was one of the early civilizations in our continent. No one is sure why the Olmec fell from power, but we know that they influenced other cultures. Today, some historians call the Olmec the mother culture of the Americas. That is because many Olmec customs or way of doing things were continued in later civilizations. So now we're going to talk about the Mayan. The Mayan civilization was influenced by the Olmec traditions. So a lot of their traditions they got from that last group we just talked about, the Olmecs. A tradition is a way of life or an idea that has been handed down from the past. Between AD 300 and AD 900, the Maya ruled much of what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, and northern Belize. Like the Olmec, the Maya developed their own writing system. This allowed them to record their history. Their writing system was based on hieroglyphs, or picture symbols. Again, remember, one cool feature about nonfiction texts is sometimes these words will have where it gives you the pronunciation of the word. So we have hieroglyphs, so we know how to pronounce that word. Another group that had hieroglyphs was the Egyptians. So you might have seen some of their picture writing. The Maya had something similar. They had their own version of picture writing. The Maya also developed a counting system that included zero. Before they made that, there was no way to represent that you had nothing. So the Maya came up with it and decided that it was probably a good idea to have a number representing nothing. The Maya were divided into social classes. A class is a group of people in a society who have something in common. At the top of Mayan society were the religious leaders. Then came important families, traders, and farmers. So basically, the religious leaders were the most important in their society. They were at the top. And then the next important group of people were important families. So maybe people who were, owned a lot of land or something. Then traders, which is people who traded goods and traded different items. And then finally at the bottom were the farmers. To me, that doesn't make sense because of all these people would not have food if it was not for these people. But their society was divided into social classes. Mayan civilization had no central government. Instead, powerful kings ruled cities and controlled the surrounding areas. The Maya built more than 100 stone cities. The largest was Tikal, which had as many as 100,000 people. The city of Copan was a center of learning and art. Some scientists are not sure why the Mayan civilization fell. Some scientists blame a series of droughts or long periods with little or no rain. However, even after the Maya fell from power, their cultural influence continued. Then here we have the question to make you think. How are the Mayan and Olmec civilizations alike? Well, we know they both developed their own writing system. They both came up with things for numbers. You know, their Olmec number system helped develop the calendar. The Mayans developed the number 0. And this is a cool picture of some of the Maya ruins. This is a place where visitors can go and climb to the top of the pyramids. Here it says, you know, they're visited by thousands of people every year. Even some places allow them to climb the top of the stone pyramids. Now we have 2 more civilizations we're going to talk about. The Olmec and the Maya were 2 of the largest early civilizations in the Americas. Other civilizations also grew in what is now the United States. Scientists use the name mound builders to group together many Native American societies. So here we're reading in the subheading mound builders. These societies all built large earth mounds. However, their cultures, their locations, and even their reasons for building mounds differed. So even though they all built mounds, each of those tribes were different. The earliest mound builders were the Adena. Their civilization was located in the Ohio River Valley. It lasted from about 1000 BC to AD 200. The Adena mounds were used for burials. As more people were buried at these sites, the mounds got bigger and bigger. Some of the mounds reached heights of 90 feet. So for the Adena, they used the mounds to bury their dead. The largest of the mound building civilizations was the Mississippian. It began in the Mississippi River Valley in about AD 700. 2 of the largest Mississippian cities were Spiro, in what is now Oklahoma, and Cahokia, near present-day East St. Louis, Illinois, which you guys may have heard of Cahokia. By AD 1200, more than 30,000 people lived in Cahokia. Cities like Cahokia helped support a strong trade system. The next group we're going to talk about is the ancient Puebloans. So on that map we just looked at on page 15, the place in the southwest where Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico meet, that's where you'll see the Puebloans. This area is called the Four Corners. Some of the first people to settle in this area were known as the ancient Puebloans. So I'm going to go back up to that map. If we look at our legend, here's the Puebloans, and you can see here it's called Four Corners because the 4 corners of those states meet right there. So this is where the Puebloans lived. The ancient Puebloans lived in houses that had many levels. These houses were often built against canyon walls or in caves. When the Spanish arrived in the Southwest many years later, they called this kind of home a pueblo, the Spanish word for village. So we have the question here, we're going to stop and think. How were the homes of the ancient Puebloans built? They built them into caves, kind of like, or into sides of cliffs like this. And they did this to help keep them cool. They also did this to help keep them safe from predators and from attacking tribes. So it's kind of neat. This is out in Colorado, so at the area that is known today as Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado, ancient Puebloans built stone villages into the canyon walls. So you can see where they built their village. So now that we've read, you're going to go back to the team page or the assignment page, and you're going to open up worksheet 13. So when it pulls up, you're going to remember that you're using information that you learned from last lesson and from this lesson to complete this worksheet. So you'll want to click Edit in Presentation, Edit in Browser. Now it pulls it up, then you'll need to zoom in. Now these words that we're going to be filling in on here are actually our vocabulary words. So if you want to go back and pull up, the readings from the last 2 days, then you can definitely do that, and that'll help you find these words. What we're going to do, if you need to zoom in, you click View, Zoom, and we'll take a look. So you're going to be filling these words into the boxes. So like number 1 says, the first people in North America many thousands of years ago are blank, or early family members of present-day Native Americans. So you're going to look through each of these words and see which one makes sense in that blank. So kind of thinking about, what is an early family member? What did we say that word was? Is an early family member a class? Is an early family member an ancestor? Is an early family member a civilization? Is an early family member a migration? Or is an early family member a theory? And then you'll decide which word goes there, and you'll put your answer in there. And then you're going to go through for each of these questions, putting the word in there that belongs. And again, you're using these 5 words to fill in those blanks. Once you have all your blanks filled, click close and click turn it in. Again, if you have any questions, send me an email, a message on Remind, or a message here on Teams.